Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation 24 channel, I hope. Everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Todd and Julie Chrisley's oral arguments make misconduct claims. Attorneys for Todd and Julie Chrisley concluded their oral arguments on Friday, April 19. Several members of the Chrisley family were in attendance as the attorneys presented more details of the case. Keep reading to learn more about the claims of misconduct and whether or not Todd and Julie Chrisley have a chance to be released early. The Chrisleys' attorney presents oral arguments. The Chrisleys and their attorneys started the appeals process immediately after the couple was sentenced in November 2022 for fraud and tax evasion. Now, nearly a year and a half later, they have concluded presenting their oral arguments. Neither Todd nor Julie Chrisley were present in the courtroom for the hearing. However, several members of their family were in the crowd. Savannah Chrisley, Chase Chrisley, Grayson Chrisley, and Nanny Faye Chrisley were all in the Atlanta courtroom on Friday. Savannah's boyfriend, Robert Shriver, was also in attendance. Alex Little made an argument that there was misconduct at play in the case. He said that the evidence suggested that the prosecutors here worked in concert with the witness. First, the issue that was discussed that came out in the redirect, and then the recross of Officer Betty Carter, was whether the Chrisleys had paid taxes in the post-conspiracy period. He presented to the court. Then Little proceeded to say that the district court confirmed that there would be a potential prejudicial effect on the defendants, leading the jury to believe that they had not paid their taxes, that they weren't interested in paying taxes, that they were untruth type of person who could commit fraud charged in the other acts. He argued that the effect of that prejudice spilled over to all of the charges in the case. When it comes to the taxes that the Chrisley knows best couple owed, Alex Little argued that they paid everything before trial. Additionally, the government is not claiming that the taxes haven't been paid. The IRS didn't know what they were doing. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, Little said in the courtroom on Friday. He went on to say that in the IRS system, you can see both taxpayers, and you can see that there's a large sum sitting for Todd Chrisley that has not been applied to the joint return with Julie Chrisley. Alex Little continued, saying that Officer Betty Carter neglected to look further into the system. Todd and Julie Chrisley's future is still uncertain. Annalise Peters, a rep of the U.S. Attorney's offices, had a different story to tell. She argued that there is no case for appeal at all. The evidence was overwhelming at trial that the Chrisleys had taken a number of steps to evade the IRS, and they conspired to evade the IRS, she concluded. Todd and Julie Chrisley initially reported to prison to serve their sentences in January 2023. While their sentences have already been reduced, the family is hoping they will be released altogether soon. Before the oral arguments were presented in court, Savannah Chrisley opened up on her podcast about the situation. Once again, super grateful for that there are other avenues due to how our trial played out that we could take to get a new trial, or to, just hopefully get them out early, she said on the April 16 episode of her Unlocked podcast. So when it comes to the appeal, that's kind of where we're at. Inside the towering stone walls of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta, the Chrisleys once again stepped into the spotlight. Though this time it was far from the glitzy sets of their former USA Network reality show. The air inside the courtroom was electric with tension as attorneys representing Todd and Julie Chrisley passionately delivered oral arguments that claimed judicial misconduct, prosecutorial overreach, and a deeply flawed trial process had led to their convictions. Julie sat still and poised, her expression betraying nothing but quiet strength. Todd, on the other hand, occasionally shifted in his seat, a man clearly stifled by the weight of everything that had come crashing down. Their matching suits, a soft gray on Julie, a deeper charcoal for Todd, seemed to signal unity, determination, and perhaps a final push to reclaim their narrative. Their legal team wasted no time attacking what they claimed was the heart of the injustice: misconduct. "Your Honors," began the lead appellate attorney, his voice steady and practiced, the Chrisleys did not receive a fair trial. We contend that the government's conduct not only misrepresented critical evidence but relied heavily on a witness with a personal vendetta, Mr. Mark Braddock, whose credibility is, frankly, pointed to moments in the original trial where Braddock, a former business associate of Todd's who turned whistleblower, was allowed to testify despite what the defense claims was a history of deception and a personal grudge. His testimony was like a wrecking ball to reason, the lawyer continued, and it was treated as gospel. But the misconduct claims didn't stop at witness reliability. The oral arguments alleged that the IRS agents who testified misrepresented the status of the Chrisleys' taxes. They told the jury the Chrisleys owed millions, the attorney asserted, but that simply wasn't true, and the prosecution knew it. That mischaracterization of their tax standing poisoned the jury's perception. Outside the courtroom, supporters and curious bystanders gathered with phones in hand, hoping to glimpse the reality stars now fighting for their real lives. A few diehard fans held signs. #Free the Chrisleys and Faith, Forgiveness, Freedom. Back inside, the courtroom crackled with tension as the defense detailed a list of procedural missteps they believed tainted the integrity of the trial. Julie's attorney stood to address what he called the erosion of constitutional protections. The judge allowed prejudicial testimony that had no bearing on the charges, he said, his voice rising. Financial crimes are complex, but complexity should not allow for chaos in the courtroom. Julie Chrisley, in particular, was painted with the same brush as Todd, without evidence directly tying her to the orchestration of the alleged fraud. Julie looked down briefly at that moment, her fingers interlocked tightly in her lap. For all the moments she had stayed composed, this seemed to shake her. To be accused was one thing, to be lumped in without a clear voice was another entirely. Then came the most explosive moment of the morning. "We believe there was potential judicial bias," the lead attorney said flatly. Gasps and whispers rippled through the courtroom gallery. The defense alleged that certain rulings made by the trial judge, particularly decisions that limited cross-examination of key witnesses, suggested partiality. "We are not saying this lightly," the attorney clarified. "We are saying it under oath, with documented examples." He referenced a motion filed months earlier in which the Chrisleys' defense had complained that they were barred from introducing evidence that could have impeached Braddock's credibility, including previous lawsuits, alleged romantic entanglements, and discrepancies in his financial dealings. Todd leaned over to whisper something to Julie, and she nodded subtly. Observers noted the change in Todd's usually animated demeanor. This was not the flashy, quippy Todd Chrisley of reality TV. This was a man desperately clinging to the possibility of redemption. The prosecution, for their part, firmly rejected the misconduct claims in their rebuttal, saying the trial had been thorough, fair, and conducted in accordance with the law. One prosecutor went so far as to say the Chrisleys were attempting to relitigate facts through the back door of an appeal. But outside court, their attorney gave a short, pointed statement to the press. "This case is about justice. If it can happen to Todd and Julie, high-profile individuals with resources and national attention, it can happen to anyone. We believe the misconduct and overreach in this case must be acknowledged and corrected. Indeed, for Todd and Julie, this appeal may be their last shot at reversing what they describe as a railroading of the truth. They insist that their lavish lifestyle wasn't built on fraud, but on hustle, brand building, and belief in the American dream. Whether the court will agree remains to be seen." As the Chrisleys exited the courthouse through a side door, no reality cameras in sight, only a handful of journalists and attorneys, they looked like a couple bruised by the system, not broken. Julie placed a steady hand on Todd's back, and he, in turn, gave a small, stoic nod to those gathered. For a family that once lived their lives in the glaring spotlight of reality TV, it is now in the quiet, shadowy corners of appellate law that their future is being rewritten. Whether or not the misconduct claims will turn the tide remains uncertain. But for Todd and Julie, one thing is clear: they're not done fighting. Not yet.